The morning sun was soft that day, the kind of gentle light that makes every shadow stretch long across the ground. And in the middle of the small temple courtyard, people were gathering slowly, step by step, carrying flowers, brass plates, and folded hands filled with quiet hope. The sound of bells hung in the air, not loud but steady, like a heartbeat calling people together. By the time the priest was ready to begin, the space was already crowded with men in plain cotton shirts, women in colorful saris, children holding on to their parents' fingers. Some faces carried joy, some worry, and some came simply because they felt peace in such places. In the middle of the crowd, unnoticed at first, was a girl who looked no different from any other child. Her hair was tied neatly. Her eyes were calm yet searching, and she held a small plate with flowers that trembled slightly in her hands. She looked young, too young to be standing near the priest's place. Yet as the murmurs began to rise and people whispered about who would lead the prayer, the girl stepped forward. No one recognized her, not at that moment, not until much later when the truth came out. She was Sundar Pichai's daughter, but no one knew. The crowd hushed in confusion. Some looked around for the priest, others asked in low voices why a child was stepping ahead. She cleared her throat softly, and when she spoke, her voice did not carry the weight of authority, but it carried something even stronger. Sincerity. She began the prayer. For the first few minutes, people were restless, surprised that a little girl was taking the role usually reserved for elders or priests. Some even frowned, unsure if they should follow her words. Yet there was a quiet strength in the way she spoke, not rehearsed, not forced, just natural. Like she had learned the verses not from books but from listening deeply to life itself. The hook of this story lies here. A crowd gathered for puja, and a girl unnoticed led them. Later they would learn she was the daughter of one of the most powerful men in the world. Yet in that moment, she was just a child teaching adults about humility. And while the prayer went on, far away from that courtyard, Sundar Pichai himself sat in a silent room, unaware of what was happening. He was facing his own storm, a storm of doubt, responsibility, and an invisible burden that came with being seen as successful, but still feeling the weight of ordinary struggles. His story, like his daughter's moment at the temple, was about to twist in ways no one could predict. The story of Sundar Pichai did not begin in boardrooms or stages filled with cameras. It began in the crowded lanes of Chennai, where houses stood close enough that voices carried easily from one kitchen to another, where the air smelled of jasmine mixed with dust and where dreams often seemed smaller than the boundaries of the street. Sundar was born into a modest family, in a house that did not have luxuries but had something far greater: respect, humility, resilience, and kindness woven into every meal, every conversation, every sacrifice his parents made. His father, who worked in a factory that made electrical parts, believed deeply in education, even though money was tight. His mother, who once dreamed of being a stenographer, balanced the family's needs with grace. Sundar grew up not in wealth but in stories of persistence, stories where dignity mattered more than gold, where helping a neighbor was never a question but a duty, and where every small step toward learning was celebrated like a festival. Yet, inside young Sundar's heart, there was also conflict. He wondered why some children had big houses, why some families never had to think twice before buying new clothes or books. Sometimes he felt small, sometimes even angry. But his parents always reminded him that life is not about what you own, but about what you give. These words stayed with him even when he did not fully understand them. There was one evening, years later, that burned itself into his memory. He was about 12, sitting on the floor doing homework under the dim yellow light of a single bulb. His father came home late, carrying papers from work, tired but smiling. Sundar asked him quietly, almost afraid, why he worked so hard when money never seemed enough. His father looked at him and said, "Because work is not just for money. Work is for respect. Respect is what carries us when nothing else does." Sundar did not reply, but inside something shifted. That was the seed of resilience. The idea that respect is earned not in loud ways but in silent, consistent effort. Years moved, and Sundar's path took him far from Chennai. His intelligence shone bright, and his dedication carried him across countries, across oceans. He studied, he built, he rose step by step, until one day, the boy from a modest lane in India became the CEO of Google, one of the most powerful companies on earth. People celebrated his success as if it was a fairy tale. Yet few knew the storms he carried quietly, storms of responsibility, decisions that weighed heavily, sacrifices that no headline ever wrote about. Because behind every achievement was a human heart, and Sundar's heart often longed for the simplicity he had left behind. The smell of his mother's cooking, the sound of temple bells in the morning, the laughter of neighbors in the narrow streets. These were memories that success could not replace. And in the middle of all his responsibilities, there was his daughter. She was young, but wise in ways children often are when they grow up watching their parents balance worlds. She saw her father not just as a leader admired by millions, but as a man who sometimes sat quietly, staring out of the window, lost in thoughts he never spoke aloud. She once asked him, "Appa, do you ever get tired of being strong all the time?" Sundar was startled because children often see truths adults try to hide. He smiled and said, "Strength is not about never getting tired. Strength is about standing up again even when you do." That answer satisfied her for a while, but deep inside, she wondered if there was more to it. The day of the puja arrived almost unexpectedly. Sundar had been caught in endless meetings, decisions about technology, ethics, the future of millions of users. His daughter, however, felt a quiet pull toward the temple near their home, where people had gathered to offer prayers. She slipped away unnoticed, carrying the lessons she had absorbed not from scriptures but from her father's life: humility, kindness, and the power of respect. When she stepped forward to lead the prayer, no one saw her as Sundar Pichai's daughter. They only saw a girl, small and fragile, yet with a voice that reminded them of something larger: the innocence that can guide even the most experienced souls. As her voice carried through the courtyard, Sundar was thousands of miles away, sitting in silence after yet another meeting. A message blinked on his phone, but he ignored it. He felt strangely restless, as if something important was happening far away. And indeed it was. The girl's prayer reached people not just through words, but through presence. Old women wiped tears from their eyes. Young men bowed their heads, and for a moment, the crowd forgot their doubts. They followed her. They let her guide them. No one realized who she was. No one knew her father was a man leading a company that touched billions of lives. To them, she was just a child, reminding them that respect does not come from titles, humility does not come from wealth, and kindness needs no introduction. The puja ended quietly, but the whispers had begun. Who was the girl? Where was the priest? How did she know the prayers so well? People asked, but no answers came. She slipped away just as silently as she had arrived, leaving only the echo of her voice in the courtyard. Later, someone would recognize her, and the truth would spread. But for now, it was a mystery. And in another part of the world, Sundar sat in his room, his phone buzzing again, this time with a video sent by a family friend. He almost ignored it, but something made him press play. The screen lit up with the image of his daughter standing in front of a crowd, leading a prayer with steady words. His breath caught in his throat. He leaned forward, eyes wide, unable to believe what he was seeing. She was not nervous. She was not afraid. She was leading with the same quiet strength he had tried to carry all his life. And for the first time in many years, Sundar felt tears rise to his eyes. The story was only beginning. The message that changed everything. The phone slipped slightly from Sundar's hand as he stared at the glowing screen. The words were short, almost careless, but they carried a weight that made his entire body tense. She is safe for now. But things are about to change. It did not feel like a simple text. It felt like someone had reached into his private world and whispered something dangerous. For a long moment, Sundar did not move. He only heard his own breathing, heavy, uneven, mixed with the faint hum of the air conditioner. The meeting notes, scattered on his desk, no longer mattered. The plans, the presentations, the deadlines, they blurred into nothing. The only thing that existed in that moment was his daughter's face on the video, the sound of her prayer and the shadowy warning that followed. He pressed the phone against his forehead, closing his eyes, trying to steady himself. He was the CEO of one of the largest companies in the world, a man who was expected to make impossible decisions with calm precision. Yet here he was, trembling like a father who suddenly realized that power meant nothing if his child was in danger. He thought of calling home immediately, but something inside him hesitated. What if it was a trick? What if someone wanted him to panic? He forced himself to breathe slowly, to think. But thinking was hard when fear wrapped itself around his heart. Meanwhile, in the small-town temple where the prayer had taken place, the whispers had not stopped. The crowd dispersed, but the story spread quickly, carried by mouths that loved mystery more than silence. Who was the girl? Some said she was the niece of the priest. Others claimed she belonged to a wealthy family that donated to the temple. No one knew the truth, but curiosity was alive in every corner. And the girl herself, Sundar's daughter, walked back quietly with her plate of flowers. She felt a strange calm after leading the prayer, as if something larger than herself had guided her words. She did not know yet that her father had seen the video, nor that a shadowy message had been sent in the same breath. She only knew that for the first time, people had listened to her not because of who her father was, but because of who she was in that moment. But as she turned the corner toward home, she noticed something unusual. A man stood across the street, pretending to read a newspaper, though the way he glanced up at her again and again did not feel natural. She walked faster. When she glanced back, the man had folded the paper and was walking slowly in the same direction. Her heartbeat quickened. Back in his office, Sundar replayed the video over and over. He looked at her eyes, her hands, the way she carried herself. She was only a child, yet there was something striking about her presence. It reminded him of his own childhood, the courage he had needed to keep studying when resources were scarce, the strength he found in humility. She was carrying that same fire, and maybe that was why someone wanted to use her moment for something else. His phone buzzed again, another message. Don't ask questions. Don't tell anyone. Wait for instructions. This time, Sundar stood up sharply, the chair rolling back. His first instinct was to call the police, but his second instinct, sharper, stronger, told him to be careful. Whoever sent this knew exactly how to reach him. They wanted him to feel powerless, cornered. But Sundar was not a man who gave in easily. He had risen in life not by shortcuts, but by patience, strategy, and resilience. Still, this was not a boardroom problem. This was his daughter. And every second mattered. As evening fell, his daughter sat in her room, looking out the window. She could still see the face of the man with the newspaper. Had she imagined the fear in his eyes, or was it real? She wanted to tell her mother, but something stopped her. Maybe she did not want to worry her family. Maybe she wanted to be strong like her father always seemed to be. But deep inside, she felt the unease settle, heavy and uncomfortable. Her mind drifted back to the prayer. Why had she stepped forward that day? She could not explain it. It was not planned. It was not even something she had thought she could do. It just happened, like a voice inside her whispered, "Go. This is your moment." And when she spoke, people listened. That memory gave her strength, even as the night grew darker outside. Sundar could not sleep. He sat by the window, staring at the city lights. Each shining building reminded him of responsibility, of the countless people who depended on his leadership. But tonight, none of that mattered. Leadership felt empty compared to fatherhood. He remembered his own father's words. Respect is what carries us when nothing else does. But what carried a father when his child was in danger? He wondered who had sent the messages. Was it connected to his role at Google? Was it a personal threat? Or was it something stranger? Something tied to the prayer itself? The timing felt too sharp to be coincidence. His daughter leads a prayer, a video spreads, and immediately after he receives warnings. His thoughts were interrupted by another vibration on his phone. This time, it was not a text. It was a photo. He opened it, with trembling hands. It was his daughter, walking home from the temple. The angle was from across the street, the same man with the newspaper. The next morning, the world carried on as if nothing had changed. Newspapers wrote about politics. Technology blogs speculated about new devices. The city rushed through its endless routines. But for Sundar, the world had narrowed into a single focus: his daughter. He made quiet calls, not to the police, not yet, but to a few trusted people who understood discretion. He could not afford noise, not when someone had eyes on his family. He spoke in short sentences, careful with every word because he knew the sender of those messages was likely watching his every move. At the same time, his daughter went to school, pretending nothing was wrong. She laughed with her friends, answered questions in class, but inside she carried the image of the man. The uneasy feeling that someone was always close, just beyond the corner of her sight. She wanted to tell her father, but she also wanted to prove she could be strong. She had seen his struggles, how he carried weight without complaint. She wanted to carry her own without burdening him. But fate has a way of testing strength. By afternoon, Sundar received another message. This one was longer. You built a company that touches billions of lives, but you forgot that power always attracts shadows. Your daughter is safe today, but tomorrow depends on you. Do not act without us. The world will see what you choose. His stomach tightened as he read it again and again. The words were not random. They were designed to corner him, to tie his personal life to his professional power. Whoever this was, they knew exactly how to strike. He closed his eyes and thought of his daughter at the temple, leading people with nothing but her voice. She had shown him what true strength looked like. Maybe it was time he showed the same strength, not as a CEO, but as a father. He made a decision. Late that night, when the house was quiet, Sundar called his daughter into his study. She walked in softly, curious about why he looked so serious. He hesitated, then showed her the photo of herself taken by a stranger. Her eyes widened, but she did not cry. Instead, she looked at her father and asked a question that shook him. "Appa, are you afraid?" He wanted to say no, to protect her, but the truth rose like a tide. "Yes," he said quietly. "I am afraid, but I am more determined than afraid." She nodded slowly, her small hands tightening into fists. "Then I will be the same." In that moment, Sundar realized something. His daughter was not just his child. She was his mirror, his continuation. And together they would face what was coming. But what was coming was darker than either of them imagined. The unknown call. The phone vibrated on the desk, its screen glowing with the word unknown. The sound seemed louder than it should have been, echoing in the quiet house where even the night air was holding its breath. Sundar stared at it, his hands frozen above the table. His daughter sat beside him, her eyes wide but steady, as if she was trying to show him she was not afraid, even though fear was crawling inside her chest. Every instinct screamed at him not to answer. It could be a trap. It could be something worse than words. Yet there was also the sharp truth that he could not ignore. Whoever had been sending the messages was now reaching out directly. If he refused, they might escalate. If he accepted, at least he might learn something. The call kept buzzing. Sundar finally picked it up, his hand trembling slightly, though his face remained calm for his daughter. The screen flickered, and then a dark room appeared. The camera was angled low, shadows covering most of the figure on the other side. Only the outline of a man's shoulders was visible. His voice came first, low and steady, the kind that did not need to be raised to make its threat clear. "You received my messages," the man said. Sundar did not speak immediately. Silence was his defense, a tool he had used in boardrooms where words were weapons. But this was no meeting. This was personal. After a pause, he said softly, "What do you want?" The man leaned closer to the camera, but his face still remained in shadow. "Not money, not fame. You already have those. I want something more valuable. And you will give it, because you care about her." Sundar's daughter leaned forward, trying to see the screen, but he gently pulled her back, shielding her. The man continued, his words cutting like a blade. Your daughter showed something today. Strength, influence. Do you know how many people shared that video of her leading the prayer? Do you know how many hearts it touched? She is more powerful than you realize, and power always belongs to those who know how to use it. Sundar's jaw tightened. He understood now. This was not just a threat. It was a warning wrapped in temptation. The man wanted to use his daughter's moment to turn innocence into leverage. "Leave her out of this," Sundar said, his voice firm but quiet. The man gave a soft laugh. "That choice is no longer yours." And then the screen went black. For a long time, Sundar and his daughter sat in silence. The weight of what had just happened pressed down on them. She finally broke the quiet. "Appa, why me?" "I'm just a child." He looked at her, his heart heavy but proud. "Because sometimes children carry truths that adults forget. They saw it in you. They fear it, and they want to control it." She lowered her eyes, unsure how to carry such heavy words. But deep inside, a spark lit. Maybe she was young, but she was not powerless. The next morning brought no peace. Sundar went through the motions of his day, meetings, decisions, presentations, but his mind was split. Every word from his colleagues felt distant, every chart and graph blurred before his eyes. He kept replaying, the call in his head, the shadowed man's voice, the mention of the video spreading, the idea that strangers were already turning his daughter into something more than a child. He knew how quickly the internet moved, how stories grew and twisted beyond control. He had spent years studying human behavior online, but now it was his family caught in the storm. Meanwhile, his daughter returned to school. Whispers followed her there too. Classmates who had seen the video asked her questions. Some teased, some admired, but all of them treated her differently now. She wanted to hide, but she also felt a strange responsibility. When people looked at her, they expected something more. She was only a girl, yet suddenly she felt like she was carrying something much larger. And always, in the corner of her vision, she thought she saw someone watching. That evening, Sundar sat with his wife, finally sharing the truth of what had happened. She listened quietly, her face pale but strong. When he finished, she placed her hand on his and said, "You cannot fight this with silence. If you let fear guide you, they will win. We must be calm, but we must also be prepared." Her words reminded him of something his mother once told him long ago, that courage is not about shouting loudly but about standing firm when the ground beneath you shakes. He realized then that his family was his strength. He could not protect them by standing alone. They needed to face this together. Later that night, another message came. Not a threat this time, but an instruction. Bring her to the temple again. Same time, 2 days from now. She will lead again. The world will see. Do not refuse. Sundar read it 3 times, his heart pounding. They wanted to use her voice, her innocence, to reach people. But for what purpose? What were they planning to gain? His daughter stood beside him, reading the message over his shoulder. She swallowed hard, then said quietly, "Appa, maybe I should go. Maybe if I do it, they will stop." He turned sharply, his voice sharper than he intended. "Never say that. You do not negotiate with fear." She looked down, ashamed, but he pulled her close. "You are brave, but this is not your burden. It is mine." Still, he knew the truth. They could not ignore the demand. The next 2 days were filled with tension. Sundar tried to appear normal in his work, but every glance at his phone sent a chill through him. His daughter prepared silently, though not for the prayer itself. She prepared her heart, reminding herself of the strength she had felt that first day. If she had to face the crowd again, she would not let fear break her. The morning of the puja arrived. The temple courtyard was busier than before, people curious after hearing rumors of the mysterious girl who had led prayers earlier. Phones were already in hands, cameras ready. The world had shifted in 2 days, and her image was no longer just a memory. It was an expectation. Sundar stood at the edge of the crowd, hidden among the people, his eyes never leaving his daughter. She stepped forward slowly, her small frame almost swallowed by the sea of faces. Whispers rose. Some recognized her from the video, others leaned in, waiting to see what she would do. And then she began. Her voice was steady, calm, carrying across the courtyard. This time there was no hesitation from the people. They followed her words, bowing their heads, letting her guide them. But Sundar noticed something others did not. A figure standing at the far corner, half hidden, watching every movement. The same man. The newspaper man. As the prayer reached its height, Sundar's phone vibrated in his pocket. He pulled it out and saw another message. Look closer. Today is not about her voice. Today is about what comes after. His heart stopped for a moment. He scanned the crowd, searching, his eyes darting from one face to another. Something was about to happen, something that would change everything. The figure from the past, the courtyard, fell into a strange silence, broken only by the faint sound of the temple bell swaying in the breeze. The crowd had been focused on the little girl's voice, the prayer that carried both innocence and strength. But now every eye turned toward the gate. Sundar followed their gaze, his heart thudding painfully in his chest. A man was stepping inside. His pace was slow, deliberate, as if he wanted each step to echo louder than the bells themselves. The years had left marks on his face, deep lines etched by hardship and anger, but Sundar recognized him instantly. It was Aravind. Memories rushed back so quickly that Sundar almost stumbled. Aravind was not a stranger. He was someone from Sundar's own youth. A boy who had once walked the same streets in Chennai, studied in the same classrooms, shared the same dreams. They had grown up together side by side, until life had taken them in very different directions. Aravind had been brilliant too, sharp and full of ambition. But where Sundar had chosen patience, resilience, and humility, Aravind had chosen shortcuts. He wanted success fast, and when it didn't come, bitterness took root. Sundar remembered the day they had parted ways, Aravind's eyes burning with anger, his voice spitting words like poison. One day, you will regret leaving me behind. And now here he was. The crowd murmured as Aravind walked deeper into the courtyard. He did not bow. He did not fold his hands. Instead, he looked directly at Sundar's daughter, his expression unreadable. Sundar felt his fists clench by his side, but he stayed still, his mind racing. Was Aravind behind the messages? Was he the shadow that had threatened his daughter? Aravind finally spoke, his voice rough but clear. So this is the girl. The words hung in the air, and Sundar's daughter faltered for the first time in her prayer. She looked at him confused, sensing something dark in his tone. Sundar stepped forward slightly, his protective instinct flaring. What do you want, Aravind? The man turned his head slowly, and for the first time, their eyes met again after decades. There was no warmth, no trace of the friendship that once existed, only resentment sharpened by time. What I want, Aravind said, is balance. You took everything that should have been mine. The respect, the recognition, the stage. You rose while I was left behind. But life is fairer than you think. Now it is your turn to watch as someone you love becomes the center. Not for you, but for me. Sundar's chest tightened. The pieces clicked together. The messages, the threats, the focus on his daughter's prayer. Aravind had seen an opportunity, not just for revenge but for influence. He wanted to take her innocence, her sudden visibility, and twist it into his weapon. But before Sundar could respond, Aravind raised his hand. Men appeared at the edges of the courtyard, blending out from the crowd. They were not carrying weapons, but their presence was sharp, intimidating. The people around began to shuffle nervously, unsure if they were witnessing devotion or something much darker. Aravind looked back at Sundar's daughter. Pray, child. Louder. Let them hear you. Let them follow you. Today is only the beginning. She hesitated, her small hands trembling. Sundar's heart broke seeing her caught between obedience and fear. He stepped forward again, his voice low but firm. Don't listen to him. You are not his tool. The crowd shifted, whispers growing, louder. No one fully understood what was unfolding. but they could feel the tension like a storm about to break. Inside Sundar's mind, memories clashed with the present. He remembered Aravind as a boy, standing with him outside their school, both of them dreaming of big futures. He remembered the laughter, the promises of friendship forever, and he remembered the moment it all cracked when Aravind accused him of betrayal simply because Sundar had chosen a different path. He had never imagined that bitterness could survive decades. Yet here was proof. Aravind, Sundar said, trying to steady his voice. You think this will give you respect? You think forcing a child into your plan will heal the past? Respect cannot be stolen. It can only be earned. Aravind's face twisted with anger, but beneath it was something deeper. Pain. Easy for you to say. You had chances I never had. You walked through doors that were closed for me, and now your daughter will open those doors again. But this time she will not open them for you. The girl looked between the two men, her father and this stranger from his past. She did not fully understand the weight of their history, but she felt the pull of it. She saw the pain in Aravind's eyes, the determination in her father's. Her young heart whispered something to her, that maybe both of them were right in their own way. But she also knew one thing. She would not let herself be controlled. Taking a deep breath, she stepped forward and spoke, her voice trembling at first but growing stronger. I prayed because I wanted to, not for you, not for anyone. If you want power, you cannot take it from me. The crowd gasped at her boldness. Sundar felt both fear and pride flood his chest. Aravind's eyes narrowed. You are your father's child indeed. Stubborn. He turned sharply to his men, signaling something with just a glance. Sundar's pulse quickened. He could not let this escalate further, not here, not in front of so many innocent people. The temple bell rang again, louder this time, as if fate itself was marking the moment. The crowd pressed closer, torn between curiosity and fear. Some raised their phones, recording everything, their screens glowing like fireflies in the dusk. Sundar stepped forward fully now, standing beside his daughter. He placed his hand gently on her shoulder, grounding her. Whatever this is, it ends here, Aravind. You will not drag her into your storm. Aravind tilted his head, his expression unreadable. You always believed storms could be avoided, but storms are meant to be faced. And with that, he snapped his fingers. The locked temple, the heavy clang of the gates echoed through the courtyard, and in that moment, the temple transformed. What had begun as a gathering for prayer now felt like a cage. The people turned in, confusion, their voices rising in waves of panic. Mothers pulled their children closer, men pressed against the iron bars, testing them, finding them locked tight. The courtyard that only minutes ago was filled with devotion was now thick with fear. Sundar felt his daughter's small hand tighten around his, her palm cold with worry. He bent slightly toward her and whispered, Stay close to me. No matter what happens, you do not let go. She nodded quickly, her eyes wide, her breath trembling but steadying under his presence. Aravind stood at the center, unmoved by the growing unrest. His face held the calm of someone who had planned for this exact moment. He lifted his hand slowly, signaling for silence, and though the crowd was restless, many fell quiet under the weight of his gaze. Do not fear, he said, his voice carrying strangely clear across the courtyard. You are safe here. No harm will come to you. But today, you will witness something greater than ritual. You will witness truth. The words did not calm the people. They unsettled them further. Whispers ran through the crowd, questions piling over one another. What truth was he speaking of? What did he want with the girl? Why close the gates? Sundar stepped forward, pulling his daughter gently behind him. Aravind, let them go. They came for prayer, not for this. You have no right. Aravind's lips curved into a faint smile. You still think rights matter, Sundar? You always lived by rules, by patience, by waiting your turn. And look where it brought you. The world stage. Billions in your shadow. But me? I was forgotten. Rules gave me nothing. And now I will show you what happens when rules break. He turned toward the crowd again. This child, he said, pointing toward Sundar's daughter, is proof. You all saw it the other day. Her voice carried you. Her words touched you. Without wealth, without status, she became a leader. But leaders are not born for themselves. They are born for those who choose them. Today, she belongs not to one man, not even to her father. Today, she belongs to all of you, and through her you will hear the truth you have been denied. His words fell heavy, confusing many, angering some but drawing others in. There was always power in claiming to reveal hidden truths, and Aravind knew it. Sundar felt his anger burn. She is a child, Aravind. She does not belong to anyone but herself. His daughter, standing close, whispered softly, Appa, he is wrong. I will not be used. Her voice, though quiet, gave him strength. The men who had bolted the gates now spread themselves along the edges of the courtyard, forming a loose wall around the people. They were not violent yet, but their presence was sharp enough to keep everyone inside. The crowd grew restless, but no one dared make a sudden move. Sundar scanned the scene. Years of leadership had taught him to read rooms, to notice details others missed. He saw fear, yes, but also seeds of belief in some faces. Aravind was planting an idea, and ideas could be more dangerous than threats. Aravind, Sundar said carefully, choosing his words. I know you. I know the pain you carry. But this is not the way to heal it. You are repeating the same mistake, looking for shortcuts, trying to seize what cannot be seized. Respect will not come through force. It will come through the work you do, the good you bring. For a moment something flickered in Aravind's eyes, hesitation, maybe even regret, but it was gone as quickly as it appeared. You still preach patience, he spat. But the world does not wait anymore. The world listens to what spreads fastest. And today, her voice will spread faster than anything else. She will pray again. But this time, it will be my words she speaks. He raised his hand toward Sundar's daughter. The crowd gasped. Sundar stepped forward instantly, blocking her from his reach. His voice cut sharp through the air. If you want to fight, fight me, but you will not touch her. Aravind tilted, his head, his smile returning. Brave words, but bravery alone will not break the gates. He snapped his fingers and one of his men brought forward a phone, its screen glowing. The man handed it to Aravind, who raised it high for everyone to see. The world is already watching, Aravind said. This is live. Every word, every movement is streaming beyond these walls. Billions could be hearing her right now. So ask yourself, Sundar, will you let her speak? Or will the world see you silence your own child's gift? A murmur spread through the crowd. Some leaned forward, their faces lit by curiosity. Others stepped back, afraid of what it meant. Sundar felt the trap closing around him. If his daughter refused, Aravind would twist it into weakness. If she agreed, her innocence would be exploited for Aravind's agenda. And then, to his shock, his daughter spoke before he could answer. I will speak, she said, her voice clear, cutting through the noise. The crowd hushed instantly. Sundar turned to her, his eyes filled with both fear and disbelief. She met his gaze calmly. Appa, trust me. Those two words struck him harder than anything else that day. Trust me. She was no longer asking him to protect her. She was asking him to believe in her strength. He wanted to shield her from everything, but deep inside he knew she was right. He had raised her not just to be safe, but to be strong. Slowly he stepped aside, though his hand never left her shoulder. She walked forward, her small frame facing the sea of eyes and the phone camera that streamed her every move. Aravind watched, with satisfaction, convinced he had won. But when she began to speak, her words did not follow his script. I am here not because someone told me to be. I am here because I believe in prayer, in respect, in kindness. No one owns my voice. No one decides my truth. If you listen because you choose to, not because you are forced. The crowd stirred, her words ringing louder than the temple bells. Aravind's face tightened, his smile slipping. Sundar felt his chest swell with pride, tears rising in his eyes. She was stronger than he had ever imagined. But just as the crowd leaned in to hear more, a sharp crack split the air. Final prayer. The sound of the bolt snapping still hung in the air when Aravin's words struck like thunder. If she leaves now, you will never see her again. The crowd froze. The chaos stilled into silence, and even the temple bells seemed to quiet, as if the whole place was listening. Sundar held his daughter close, his heart pounding so violently he thought it might break through his chest. Aravind stood tall at the center, his face twisted with both desperation and power. His men clung to the gates, trying to hold them shut as the restless crowd pressed against them. Fear battled with courage in every corner of the courtyard, but all eyes kept returning to the child at the heart of it. She looked up at her father, her small fingers gripping his tightly. Her voice was steady when she spoke. Appa, he is afraid. That is why he shouts. People who are truly strong do not threaten. Her words, though soft, seemed to pierce through the tension. Sundar looked at her, astonished. Even here, in the middle of fear and confusion, she saw the truth with clarity he almost envied. Aravind's eyes narrowed. You think you can shame me with words? I have waited too long to be silenced now. He turned toward the phone that was still streaming live, raising it high again. The world is watching. They will see who truly leads them today. But before he could force another moment, Sundar stepped forward, placing himself between Aravind and his daughter. His voice was calm, but it carried the weight of decades. Enough, Aravind. You have carried this anger for too long. I know your pain. I grew up with it beside me. But look at what you are doing. You are not fighting me, you are fighting a child. You are trying to steal light from the one place you should protect it. Is this who you wanted to become? The crowd was silent now, every ear tuned to the exchange. Aravind's jaw tightened. For the first time, uncertainty flashed across his face. Memories flooded Sundar's mind. He remembered the evenings after school when Aravind would sit with him under the street lamp, both of them talking about dreams bigger than their small neighborhood. He remembered how Aravind laughed easily then, how hope lived in his eyes. He remembered the friendship before bitterness consumed it. Sundar's voice softened. You think I forgot you? I did not. I carried guilt for years that I could not help you the way I wanted. But anger has blinded you, Aravind. It is not me you are hurting now. It is yourself. And worse, it is this child, who has done nothing but remind people of kindness. His daughter squeezed his hand as if giving him strength. The people in the courtyard watched, torn between fear and awe. Some had begun recording again, but many lowered their phones, realizing this was not a show. This was something raw, something real. Aravind's men shifted nervously, glancing at the gates where the crowd's pressure was growing stronger. The locked temple was turning into a powder keg of fear and frustration. Even Aravind seemed to sense the breaking point. His voice rose, but it carried less conviction than before. She has power, Sundar. You cannot deny that. With her, I could